Good morning, everyone. My name is MightyStream. I'm glad to be with you today. Today is April the 27th. Oh my goodness, we only have so many more days left in the month of April. I just wanted to greet you this morning. Thank you for joining. I'm brought to you by Hope Through Navigation. This is our H.O.O.D Recovery Services. The acronym H.O.O.D, H-O-O-D, stands for Hope Offered on Demand. It's a work in progress, but it is a beautiful work and one in which I enjoy doing. So let's see here. I caught a glimpse of the meditation. It looks like it's pretty intense. Let's look at it together. April 27th. Recognizing and releasing resentments. We want to look our past in the face, see it for what it really was, and release it so we can live today. Let me reread that. We want to look our past in the face, see it for what it really was, and release it so we can live today. Basic text, page 29. Many of us had trouble identifying our resentments when we were new in recovery. There we sat with our fourth step in front of us, thinking and thinking, finally deciding that we just didn't have any resentments. Perhaps we talked ourselves into believing that we weren't so slick after all. Such unwitting denial of our resentments stems from the condition of our addiction. Most of our feelings were buried and buried deep. And after some time in recovery, a new sense of understanding develops. Our most deeply buried feelings begin to surface. And those resentments we thought we didn't have suddenly emerge. As we examine these resentments, we may feel tempted to hold on to some of them, especially if we think they are justified. But what we need to remember is that justified resentments are just as burdensome as any other resentment. As our awareness of our liabilities grows, so does our responsibility to let go. We no longer need to hang on to our resentments. We want to rid ourselves of what's undesirable and set ourselves free to recover. Just for today, when I discover a resentment, I'll see it for what it is and let it go. That is a beautiful reading. And a reading that we want to not rush through. This particular reading is one of those readings that it's like when you pack your luggage to go across country and you know you're not coming back home for a month or so. You pack pretty much everything. And the unpacking, though, is the difficult part. You know, because once you arrive to your destination, they probably, wherever you're staying, they probably have set up for you to be there for a long time. 4 weeks is a long time, even if you're staying in someone's home to visit. And they have cleared out some space for you in a drawer or two, and maybe even some closet space. And certainly if you're at a hotel, you have a few drawers and you have closet space, and you spend all that time packing 3 pieces of luggage and you get to where you're going, and you have the space to put your stuff in and pretend like you're at home, right? Your stuff is nicely put away, folded, put away, hung up. And the unpacking, though, oh my goodness, the unpacking almost seems to be worse than the actual packing, because the packing, you kind of take a few days. If you're like me, I plan what I'm going to be wearing, and I try to see how many outfits I can get out of one item. And I start removing the things that I don't plan to wear in the next week or so or before the trip, and put those in. I take my time with packing. But when I get to where I'm going, I must admit, MightyStream is lazy when it comes to unpacking. I can live out of a suitcase. It's very complicated to get me to literally unpack like I'm living in someone else's space. And so this is one of those readings that takes a minute. It takes a while to unpack. Literally discussing it is something that I cannot do in the time that I have allotted this morning. However, I do believe that we can unpack a little bit of this. And so I want you to just imagine yourself looking at your clothes in your suitcase, and you have to lift them up and out and put them either in a drawer, on a hanger. We're going to unpack this together. First of all, the title of this is intimidating, right? Recognizing and releasing resentments. So recognizing is the first step that we want to do here. And when you're unpacking, you need to figure out, what are the things that I absolutely need to either steam or iron. They need to be hung up so that they're ready for me to go when I'm ready to go. And what are the things that I can just shove into a drawer? It doesn't really matter. They're leggings, undergarments, they really just don't matter how they look, because when I put my body in them, it will stretch the wrinkles, right? So we need to recognize what we have. We need to recognize the resentments that we have, right? And so when you're sorting through your life, as it says in this reading, many of us had trouble finding our resentments when we were new in recovery. We were looking at our fourth step and couldn't even, we were like, I don't have any problems. But the inability to admit that we have some resentments stems from the conditioning of our addiction. Most of our feelings were buried, right? And this is indeed true. Most of us, we knew that we had some feelings behind something, some situation, some interaction. We had some feelings, correct? But we hid them. We hid them because if we exposed our true selves, we might look weak, needy, desperate. If we were actively using, we probably were all of those things anyway. But for some reason, when others are able to see us and see our responses to certain things, that's like giving away our ace card. Our game is revealed. And so we did a really good job of conditioning ourselves to, I don't want to say not acknowledge our feelings, our resentments, but push our feelings in the back, not let them just come out to breathe and play, right? It was a form of self-manipulation, but it was a survival skill, if I can call it that. It was something that we had to do in order to survive. Right. So when we look at our fourth step, a lot of times when we want to talk about resentments in there, a lot of us will be like, I don't have no problem with anybody. Oh, you're definitely in denial. You are definitely saying that because you condition yourself to bury your feelings. Keep them in the dark, don't reveal them, don't talk about them. And that's what this is saying here. But after some time, that begins to change. After some time, we see that they begin to emerge, those old resentments, it could just be like, for me, it was really clear that I had a lot of passion, dislike, hatred towards, that's a strong word, but I had a lot of that towards people that abuse children. Yeah, that's like a super, super sore spot with me. And one day my perpetrator walked into a NA convention, and I had just heard the speaker talking about um, recovering from abusing, molesting children, and how he had done the time. He did the crime, he did the time, and nobody in recovery could hold that against him. And I was thinking, that's pretty bold. That's bold and accurate. Like, it's not my business what your history is. In the fellowship, it's not my business what brought you here. It's not my business what I mean, in the simplest sense, I believe drugs brought us all here, but it's not my business to even know your history. It's an anonymous program. So it's not my business to even know your history, but if you share your history, it certainly is not my business to pass judgment on it. And when he said that we as the fellowship could not hold that on him, I was like, that's pretty bold. And it's pretty true. And I don't know what was going on. My life changed that day because I looked up and I saw my perpetrator. I had heard that he had been released from prison, but I had never seen him since those awful days of childhood. And here I was, a grown woman in recovery, and here this bum comes walking in, right? Just after I heard the speaker make this comment, and it rocked me. I wasn't the same the rest of that day. It rocked me. Matter of fact, I was sobbing and wailing so intensely that I remember the main speaker was not speaking at that moment. And it was a Friday night, but the main speaker sent for me because my wailing was just so intense. And that's how I became really, really good friends with someone that was on our circuit as far as going around speaking a lot. They heard my wailing in the audience and they sent for me to come sit where they were. They heard that cry. And I realized that I have a serious resentment. I have a serious resentment or issue with people that abuse children. And that's what I'm saying. You have to come to a point where you recognize, before that, I was like Mother Teresa, nothing bothers me, right? But I realized at that moment that I have some deep-rooted resentments, and they're not going to go anywhere overnight. So you have to do your work. You have to recognize what the resentments are. And then you have to, as they say, a resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You have to let those resentments go. You have to release them. This comment here, right here, as our awareness of our liability grows, so does our responsibility to let go. We no longer need to hold on to our resentments. We want to rid ourselves of what's undesirable and set our selves free to recover. I want you to think about what that means. I want you to sit in that and think about what that means. Why now if you are dealing with your liabilities and taking responsibility for your actions, we're clearly talking about 4-step work here. Why now are you being held responsible to let them go? Exactly. That's correct. If you said because they're a liability, that's absolutely correct. Have you ever heard a coach or someone that coaches say something like this? The reason you lost is because you were angry. You went into the fight angry. It's something they said pre-fight, right? At the pre-fight conference, they said something and you were like, I'm gonna get you. Because you were so angry and you were fighting from a place of, I gotta get this knockout and show the world, right, that I'm better than what they said I was. You lose your ability to strategically fight. And so we have to remember that this is the battle of our lives. Our disease of addiction up until we got here was winning. It was kicking our tail. And you can be angry about all of the things you passed through. You can have an attitude about how some people treated you, but at the end of the day, your disease of addiction is the reason why the majority of this stuff jumped off, that you're resentful about. And the only side of the street that you are responsible is to clean your side of the street. If the person on the other side of the street doesn't want to come out and play, they probably have a good reason in their mind not to want to do business with you. They probably have a good reason in their mind not to want to do life with you because they don't have a program. They don't have what you have. You have tools, 12 tools that allow you to investigate who you are and how to use spiritual principles that come from the steps of working them. You have a tool belt with at least 12 spiritual principles in them, and you're being taught on a daily basis how to use those weapons of warfare constructively. They don't have that. All they have is their interaction with you. 9 times out of 10, they don't have that. They have their interaction with you, and they have bad memories of how many times you got over on them, how many times you said you were coming back for the kids and you never came back, that they ended up having to decide eventually either to call the police, call CPS. They kept watching for you to return to get your responsibility, your children, and you never showed up. And they kept those kids maybe for days or weeks or months at a time, hoping that you would go on into treatment and come out and get your life together. And it just didn't happen. Year after year after year, decade after decade, they got fed up. And so now they don't even want to see you knock on the door. Even if you're coming to give an amends, they're not interested in it because they're like, I'm just better without her in my life or him. Right. And so that doesn't change your responsibility. It might create in you some more anxiety, some more resentments, right? Like, how dare they? I done did all this work and I'm clean, and they want to keep going back to umpteen years ago and throwing it in my face. How dare they? Well, we pretty much conditioned them to do that by our misuse and our abuse of them and their energy, their time, and their money. Right? So the thing that I want you to do is focus on your side of the street, recognize your resentments and release them. I want you to unpack this heavy bag that you have brought along with you into recovery. And I want you to figure out which weather zone you live in. Because if you came from Michigan like I do, and I'm packing warm sweaters and hoodies and boots for the snow, and I'm going to Florida, I have packed the wrong type of clothing. I'm going to get to Florida and find out, where are your flip-flops, girl? Where's your sandals? Where's your shorts, your bikini? Where's you, right? The weather is different than it is up here. And I'm trying to take some baggage full of stuff that is useless. And that's what I'm trying to say. It's like you are on the journey of recovery. And there's some things that you have packed just out of habit that you don't need for this trip. And you're going to need to look into that piece of luggage, that baggage, and find out, recognize your resentments. What's there that you don't need? But the other part of that is that you need to release those resentments. See, we no longer need to hang on to our resentments. You are going to need to get rid of the undesirable things and set yourself free. Now, you better believe that the next time I go down south and I know that it's 80, 90 on a daily basis, I am going to pack what will benefit me. My free spirit benefits me. My joy, my happiness benefits me, right? My ability to compromise, my responsibility, my sense of being responsible benefits me. When I say I'm gonna do something, I do it. When I say I'm gonna be there at a certain time, I'm there early, right? And so that's what I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to your ability to not only recognize your resentments, but release them. You've got to unpack them and leave them. You don't need them. You don't need them. You have a new set of clothes. You don't need that stuff, right? And just like that speaker that I saw, it said, y'all can't hold it on me. If you do the work, nobody can hold your past on you. They might want to, but that's their problem. My name is MightyStream, and I have enjoyed spending time with you this morning. Talk to you tomorrow.